the greatest give that you'll ever be able to give is love, and that's the message of Jesus. That's the message of the gospel, and those are the tools you can use. But it's like wherever you go, it's like nothing is produced without love. Nothing is produced without intentionality and care.
Between the Grooves is hosted by James Curtis, music director and morning man in the Greater Toronto Area on Joy Radio. Hosts James Curtis talk to artists and industry insiders to discover the connection between music and faith. You can connect with the show at faithstrongtoday.com/betweenthegrooves or via Twitter @betweengrooves.
Well, here we are, episode 218 of Between the Grooves, your look at music, ministry, and everything in between with today's top Christian artists. In just a moment, we're heading to the Golden State of California for a chat with Ryan Ellis. His big hit right now, Heart of the Father, but he's also written songs for other notable CCM artists as well. Before we get to that, though, a reminder to join me for our Christmas episode where we bring back many of our previous guests over the last year to share some Christmas memories, and I've got a little surprise for you, too. Okay, let's get to my conversation with Ryan Ellis. So much to cover: his journey, how his work at rehab centers has inspired much of what he does in music, the state of the church in North America, poverty, his family, particularly the loss of his son. Oh, there's so much to talk about. Let's get Between the Grooves with Ryan Ellis.
Flow, sometimes my ADHD will get distracted. So
look, a squirrel.
Hey. But yeah, man, thanks for having me.
Do you seriously have a disorder, or are you just kidding around?
I would be pretty. I would say that I probably have like a disorder. I don't know. I don't have it diagnosed, but I have all the telltale signs. Did
you have the problem in school where you just couldn't, keep attention or, keep focused on what was going on?
Yeah, but it's so hard because these disorders, it's attention. Just give me something that I really want to focus on, and I don't have it. You know what I'm saying? So It's a matter of just like maybe I don't want to focus on what you want me to focus on.
Maybe I'm just not interesting.
maybe I'm just not that interested in what you're trying to show me.
Right, exactly. I hear you. Yeah, same thing when I was in school. Same sort of thing. If it's just something boring, like how can you stay focused listening to something that you're not interested in? And it's the same thing when you hear preachers too, if I can say.
100%.
My brother is a pastor, and I don't know if it's because I'm related to him, but I can get into when he's talking because he has not that he's making up illustrations, but he has, when he does give an illustration, it's practical, it's something real life, something that you can relate to. And then he also goes and gives the whole background. Like if he's studying, a good example is he was doing a series on the book of Hebrews, and what a difficult book to do a series on, but he laid the foundation with all this background information, so you kind of could see where he was getting at from what happened back then and relating it to what's happening in life today. So it was easier to get into that way.
It's a gift. It really is. People who have the gift of teaching, and there's all different types of, there's so many different styles of preaching that's out there right now, and so many different. I feel like you have the Judah Smiths where it's very it's like have you ever Judah? You know who Judah Smith is?
Yeah.
Judah Smith is like, I've seen him live, and I was like, oh, I get it. It's like this theatrical, like emotional, like this thing he's sucking you into. There's humor. There's wisdom and all that other stuff. But then some other preachers, they just like straight up reading the textual, from the word and then breaking it down from the Hebrew, and then you just got Holy Spirit fire preachers. There's so many different kinds, I think, which is good because there's just so many different kinds of people. There's so many different kinds of ways that people connect,
As long as they're not yelling.
Oh man, sometimes you need a little yelling.
I don't know. That's the one thing that bothers me when I hear somebody, a preacher yelling. It's just like, I can hear you. Like,
I get
tone it down a bit, you know?
I get it. Yeah, there's like sometimes frustrations. Like, remember Mark Driscoll back in the day? Like, dude, whenever I saw that guy yell, I was like, I was like, you just want to be like, lock it up, bro. Like,
right.
you know, like, stop yelling at, you know, I get it. Like, how dare you? And I'm like,
well, yeah, why are you mad at me? Right?
I don't get it.
And it's not necessarily that they're mad. They're just very emotional, I suppose. But just try to tone it down, you know? Like, yeah, there's nothing wrong with being passionate, but stop yelling. You know, I can hear you fine and you're hurting my ears, you know?
You know, the good kind of yelling is like Martin Luther King type yelling, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But they were like yelling because they were preaching to like, you know, 50,000 people, you know, at, you know, Washington Monument.
Yeah.
And, but it feels like there's, you know, that type of preaching when it gets to like, you know, there's that one sermon Martin Luther King preaches when he's like, I'm not fearing any man. You remember that one? Where he's like,
you do a good job, by the way.
Dude, I've listened to it over and over again, man, where it's just like, man, it's powerful. That type of passion, you know what I'm saying? But when you're just up there, kind of, it feels like a temper tantrum.
Yeah. Now, speaking of passion, I gotta say, your song "Heart of the Father," that bridge, wow.
We sing praise.
I mean, you could sing that forever.
Yeah, it's a good one.
And the harmonies that are in there that just keep building and building and building. It's just, wow, what a powerful song. And yet the lyrics are so simple, you know?
Yeah, very simple. And it's, you know, it was because of the college town that, you know, we lived in, and we had to, you know, it very simple for us. I think, you know, the simpler you make things, the easier it is. And so, you know, we were in a college town doing worship nights in the backyard, in the back garage. We didn't have like a prompter or like words to put up. You know, we just kind of sang what was easy to sing, you know, and for us it broke it down too, because we were like, well, it can't be super wordy, you know, if it's gonna hit too, it's gonna hit, you know, people will catch it right away. So
I think these days, maybe it's just because of the competition out there, I find that a lot of songwriters tend to be too wordy. It's almost like they're trying to over-engineer the song.
Yeah, I think a lot of that happens because of, you know, just the way writing is these days. You don't have a lot of people that are just writing songs by themselves. That's a lot of co-writing, you know, which is what I do too. You know, I'm a big co-writer, you know, I start off in the secret place, but then, you know, you really finish the song co-writing. And, but I think a lot of the times what's happened now is people don't start off in the secret place, or they're not doing it. And then they're just going in to these rights, and then it just gets real wordy. You know what I'm saying? Like,
and almost too big, almost too big as well, you know?
Yeah, too big, or just, you know, and it's hard to get those authentic worship, you know, like what people are really loving right now is like worshipful moments, you know, like the Stephanie Gretz singers, or like, you know, the Map City moments, these really worshipful, inspired, spontaneous moments. But that comes like spontaneously, you know, and that's why YouTube is so amazing. And, you know, you can capture those moments with recordings, but to write that is like, you can't write those things. And that's really what people want to see. So it's hard, you know, you got all these co-writers that are just going in, but I think there's like a balance of having songs that have depth and have meaning and words. And then there's the songs that just, you know, I think it's okay if there's just simplicity in songs sometimes too. So there needs to be the balance. I
prefer the simple stuff because I can't figure out some of the more complicated songs. It's above me. No, you're a worship pastor. So what sort of songs are you leading in your church?
Well, I'm not a worship pastor as much as I am just a husband and a father right now. You know, I'm like, and a songwriter. I'm not, you know, right now we aren't really at any church. We, you know, after the pandemic, before the pandemic, we were really kind of just wandering in the desert. You know, I was working for a church, and then we had a son that was born with special needs. And he was like he was a very rare case, and it, you know, required a lot of time. And so The church, and that's what, that's what we're all learning along the way is like, what is church? It's family, it's community. It's where I was, it was more, from what I found out, it's just a business, and then after getting let go from that position after my son was born for budget cuts, they, I was really faced with this thing of like, what am I going to do? Am I going to go to another church and like just start? Like I'm in the middle of this chaotic season with my family. My son, they said he wasn't going to live a week. Then he wasn't going to live 6 months. And then, he lived 1.5 years, and he was fighting. It was just this really rare disease, the syndrome that he had. But this whole time, we were on lockdown, before lockdown even happened, we were, my family, his immune system was so weak, he had oxygen machines, feeding tubes, and really just, we were just at home for like maybe 2 years, and we kind of got to see really like our community around us, the people who did come through, the people who didn't, and bro, hard times, man. There's not that many people. It really comes down to you and Jesus, and the churches that we, a lot of churches shut down around here. A lot of people stopped gathering. And so I'm kind of like been writing these songs. I've been writing these songs and doing this album, where I was a worship pastor and I was a worship leader at churches. And I did house churches and movements and all this other stuff. And God like brought me into the season of just being, with my family and with him and a few other brothers. And that really has been like what church has been to me, is just like doing life deeply with people, like these churches that I've been going to, like I knew maybe like the sound guy and like the worship like the worship other, whatever. I didn't like, and I saw these people, hey, what's up? Da, 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 da. But it wasn't like I was like, these homies were coming over and like, babysitting my kids or crying with me when my son, so the circle got real small. So that's been my church, and my church has been me and my family, my wife, my kids. And these songs have been, and the people around me, I've been finding like, that's been my biggest question is like, God, what am I doing right now? What am I doing right now? Because it used to be, leading, college ministries up in Santa Barbara. Then it used to be leading a spontaneous worship night in coffee shops. And then it used to be mega churches in Orange County. And then it's nothing, right. Then it was like, now you gotta take care of your family. And I still had to worship because I still had the heat on me, because I had these record labels, knocking on the door, and I was like, God, am I supposed to sign these record label deals? And he was like, this is where you're supposed to go, and in the midst of like my son passing away and everything, it was like, okay, God, where are we going next? And my church has been my A&R team, right? my publishing team, the people that I'm co-writing with, that's my mission field. And those are the people that I commune with. And it's been eye-opening, but it's also been a trip to be like, okay, doesn't always look the way you think it's going to look. So these songs have been ministering to me, my wife, my kids. And it's so interesting because it is kind of hard because, like we're seeing everywhere, people like these worship moments and they like to see these circles and people going off. But I'm not really doing that. You know what I'm saying? I have these songs that I know in my heart. If you put me in a crowd of people, like I could lead them. But dude, the pandemic, COVID, like my recent season with my son, I haven't been in front of people in a minute. But whenever I am in front of people, it's like the most amazing thing. It's like, whoa, God, these songs do work and people do connect with these songs. But that's my biggest challenge right now, is trying to find out where I can play. It's like,
do you think you'd ever get back to that point where, I hate to say it like you said it, but the business of church, would you ever get back into that sort of scenario?
I feel like I'm in the biggest church right now, Christian music game. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. This is like the same thing, it's like you have, at the end of the day, it's people, it's like, when you're working for a church or if you're volunteering at a church, you're there because, that it's about people, you know? And that's the game I think that's the game of life, you know. If you can figure out, you know, I woke up this morning getting ready for this thing, and the phrase, you know, and I wrote it on my notes, but it's like the greatest give that you'll ever be able to give is love, you know. And that's the, you know, that's the message of Jesus, that's the message of the gospel, you know, and those are the tools you can use. But it's like wherever you go, it's like nothing is produced without love. Nothing is produced without intentionality and care, you know, and there's fruit from that. So I've been just thinking, wherever I go, wherever God puts me, I'm just going to try to be that, you know?
You know, if you're volunteering or on staff at a church, if that's all you are doing and you don't have relationships with people that you work with or that you're with, volunteering with, it kind of defeats the whole purpose, because that's not what the church community was ever intended to be.
Yeah, and you have a lot of people that will walk away and say, oh, I was hurt by the church, because that's what they go in expecting. Mm-hmm. And, you know, it's hard because people are people, you know, and it's just this like back and forth game, I think, even for myself. It's like going back into my own heart and my secret place with God, and getting the blueprint for my surroundings. You know what I'm saying? Where so many people, they don't know how to develop that conversation with God. They don't know how to develop that conversation within themselves and talk to, you know, and process those things and have the right filters to where you're going in with a mission rather than trying to get, you know what I'm saying? And when you go into places and you're trying to get, you will always be disappointed, because no one will ever be able to give you whatever, you know, to fill that void, right? Whatever that void is. So it's like signing up to work for a church. You think you're going to be in like this crazy, amazing, you know, but I think the hardest thing to really comprehend is like, it's always going to be messy. You know what I'm saying? And, and there's just, and that's the thing. That's the game. It's like, it's the ups and downs and learning how to just get better every day. You know, like I've been leading, you know, I've been actually leading in front of people, but it's been these rehab homes out here in Orange County. And my buddy, who we started these house churches back in the day, like in 2016, 17, and we were doing these house churches called Gospel House in Orange County, and focused on the youth and like doing these amazing worship encounters and just creating community and building up young people. And it was awesome. And then, you know, everything shut down, and my buddy, who was the kind of the pastor, the speaker, he gets involved in these rehabs. His friend says, hey, you know, you can be kind of like you know, there's ministry time and stuff like that. And so he goes in and he starts using the gospel, you know, like the stuff that he taught at these gospel house nights, you know, and these kids are getting total transformation. You know, he's seeing a crazy turnaround, where a lot of rehabs, they don't turn like the you know, I don't like to say failure rate, but the failure rate in rehabs, the turnaround is so quick and it's so high. The people who don't actually get any healing from it, you know, they go, but with the gospel,
it's not rehabbing them.
Exactly. It's just kind of like this. And, you know, and I've just been thinking like, so I've been going there and doing these, trying my songs out, you know, going there, because I've been like, if these songs hit with these people, you know, they have to hit with the church, you know, like these are real people who really need, you know, something deeper than whatever they're getting. So I'd go in there, I share some of my testimony, and I'll sing, you know, Heaven, you know, which is on my EP. My head is, I'm into, because everybody's lost somebody, you know, everybody's lost somebody, or everyone's gone through that type of, you know, everybody hurts. And, you know, and I feel like that's just a great way to communicate with people who aren't real Christians. But everybody will, you know, everyone has some sort of spirituality, you know, and I ease into it. I start talking to them, and then I start introducing Jesus, and not to manipulate, but I'm just talking about my own experience, you know, from when I first got encountered to where I am right now. And it's undeniable, like just the miracles and what God has done. And these kids are detoxing in front of me, but then they're just so focused and wide-eyed. You know what I'm saying? Remember we're talking about ADHD and like, you know, these people, you can see they got something to look at now. You know, I can see it in their eyes, and I'm seeing the transformation, and I'm like, whoa, and I'm playing these songs. And then they come to this bigger event that we do called God Shot, which is more rehabs, and we put them all in one spot, and then we just go in, and it's beautiful to see. But I was just thinking, it was like churches are just spiritual, emotional rehabs for people, you know, in a lot of ways. Like, you know, they come to these churches and they expect to like have all the answers figured out when everyone is there, because everyone's trying to get the answer figured out, you know, like everyone's trying to get that spiritual healing, you know, they're trying to get that community with God and with people. But everyone there we're all messed up. You know what I'm saying? Like we're not, who's really qualified? And so when people are failing you, it's like, it's just because we're all the same, you know, like we're all just trying to do our best, and you can't hold expectations over people. So, you know, that's my journey too. That's what I've been like learning for myself, because I feel like my biggest issue is like I have too big of a heart. I used to trust people too much, you know, and then you just see that people are going to be people, but you know, it's hard. Loving is hard.
Yeah. I find that if I don't know if this is a term or not, but the structured church in North America, tend to, I shouldn't say even use the word tend to, very often they can become clubs. Like it's the cool thing to do. And that's what bothers me, because what you're describing at these rehab places that's church. I mean, that, you know, everybody's broken, everybody's got hurts, everybody's got problems, and the church was never meant to be a resort. It's meant to be a hospital.
Oh my gosh, it's so refreshing to be in these rehab meetings, because I can be as broken as I want to be. Because these guys are as broken as can be. And like, they're not high. They're detoxing in front of me. Like, some of them are just shivering. They got a blanket over them, no shirt, you know, and they're just kids, you know, but it's like, it's not, it's so hard now for me to like hear people when they just judge and they hold up these picket signs, man. And I'm like, dude, you just don't have any idea what that person has been through, or like the trauma they've experienced, molestation, you know, how many girls are molested, you know, at a young age. Like a lot of females are like just sexually abused at such a young age, and young boys too. And that'll jack any human being up in the mind. And then we have the right to be like, I don't know. It's just so weird. I think we expect people to have these breakthroughs, when, you know, I've been saying is like salvation and emotional health are two separate things. Mm-hmm. Jesus came and he saved, you know what I'm saying? He's the savior, and our salvation is there, and there's fruits of the spirit. You know, it's like, I feel like people are intermingling these things, and that's where people can't really get their breakthrough, you know, where people, it needs to be normalized that like there are people who do struggle with depression, and people who do struggle with certain disorders and different things, because the human person has experienced so much trauma in their life, and these scars that are all in their body. And you know, I've heard it said, it's like there's this thing. It's like if you were to collect every single foul smell you ever smelt in your entire life, and you brought it into your house and you just locked it up, you know, if you open up that door, it's going to smell terrible. And that's what we do with our trauma, you know, our emotions. We just shove it down, and we shove, you know, God is good over it. And we don't actually get to air it out. We don't actually, that's why it says confess your sins to your brother and sister so that you may be healed. But I think so often we think that sin, we're like, oh, this is like, it's, you just gotta like talk about it, you know, you gotta get it out. But these clubs and these different types of church movements, where it's like, if you're not operating in a high level of joy, then you're not operating in the Holy Spirit. And that to me is where people like get lost.
Right.
So
yeah, that, and the fact that people just kind of show up because it's the cool thing to do, and they're not really participating, I suppose.
Yeah, they're just there just to check it out. And
well, it's a great Facebook or Instagram post, right? To say that I was there and post a selfie or something.
Yeah.
You know, like just.
Yeah, I feel like there's all types of people that, you know, are drawn to different, you know, but again, I have to I always go back and forth with okay, God, you're using that place, you know, for everything, you know, like, God, you're using this place, and you're, you know, and sometimes it can feel that way, but, you know, I've been just trying to stay present, you know what I'm saying? I've been trying to stay present. I've been trying to stay focused on my family, on me, what getting up early, you know, I've been trying to get up early, like 4 o'clock in the morning, 5 o'clock, and just going for a run and getting my mind right with God. And, because all those things, I'm an artist, you know, I'm a Christian artist. It's so funny, right? Christian artist, where art is so abstract and Christianity is something that's so truth. You know what I'm saying? How do you mix those two? But I'm trying, you know what I'm trying to display what's on the inside, so that, because now we're not all the same. You know, there's one truth, but we're not all the same in how we connect. So I'm trying to stay focused on my grind, stay focused on what God's called me to do. And that's a message too, man. It's you see all these people out there. It's that's the thing about social media, and that's the thing about just the day and age we live in, you know, is we have so many distractions, and we have such an easy way to do it. You know, it's funny. We have the phone. It's called the Apple phone, and yet we pick it up every single time. You know, that's what I've been thinking. Every single time I go to pick up that iPhone, I go, am I taking from the tree or am I giving to the tree? You know what I'm saying? Every single time I've been doing that now. It just snapped in my head past a week ago, and I'm okay, when I pick this phone up, am I trying to, you know, this Apple, is it to bite and get something that I feel that I don't have, or is it to give something away?
Right.
That's
a good way of looking at it, because you know, I've always looked at my phone as a tool, right? Versus, you know, a lot of people have a smartphone that they just use to play games or watch videos or whatever else. And I guess that's part of it too. Are you giving or are you taking? They're just taking, whether they need that or not, I suppose. Scrolling on social media and just wasting time. But are you actually doing something constructive with that device?
Right. Yeah. That's been my biggest thing. It's just getting sucked into comparison, getting sucked into, you know, just feeling not where I should be, or where, you know, you start, that is exactly what, you know, the enemy wants you to do, man. You know, we got the Apple now in our hands. So yeah, I just been trying to really stay present, trying to stay focused, and have the real sensibility of the present is heaven. You know, for me, when I don't know what heaven's going to be like. And all these people who be who hear this and they're going to say heaven's going to be so much better than earth. I'm dude, you don't know. Right. You have no idea, bro. You have no idea. And you know what I'm going to be doing when I'm in heaven? I'm probably going to be TiVoing my memories of when my babies were born, you know, and when when I got those moments with my wife when we were laying in bed and just staring at each other, you know, no words, you know, mm-hmm. Heaven's going to be amazing, bro. But what's amazing is when you actually get to feel the present moment and you take it in, and it'll never happen again. You don't have a phone, or don't have a picture or video, and you have that conversation with God in your head, and you're dang, this is it right here. This is beautiful. Yeah. And when you can really sit in a place of thankfulness, that fullness, that's actually heaven. You know, that's what I feel that's what God intended for us to feel, you know. But if you don't have an idea of you know, some people get to peace through different ways, right? But if it's a lifestyle with Jesus, you eventually get to that place where you can sit and you can really step back, because all your fears are calmed because of what God has said. All your anxiety is gone because, you know, because it's filtered through truth. And then you have the eyes of love for your family, because you know what forgiveness and mercy and kindness is, and you can appreciate your children because you know how precious life. You know, these things are only incorporated. You don't think this other way. You know, who else thinks this way except for Christians, and then you get to this place of real like, wow, I'm just thankful.
Yeah.
And that's the goal.
I think, based on what you've said, and I agree with it, I think, when you look at a phone, I think it's become an idol of sorts, or perhaps the online persona has become the idol, where you spend more time worried about what people think of you. And sometimes I'll just scroll, and I don't spend tons of time online. I really don't, because I don't have time. Like, I've got a job, I've got a family, I've got responsibilities, and then when I do scroll, I think, how did you find all that time to post all that stuff? Not me, but other people. I was looking at one person the other day, and it's like, whoa, you've posted like within a span of 20 minutes, you've made 3-4 different posts on this event that you attended, and they're all selfies. And I'm thinking, okay, what's important to you,
Yeah, I mean, I have my opinions about social media, as far as like what's healthy for me and what's not healthy,
Mm-hmm.
As far as like what it's, what's funny is Jesus came back in a time where the world had been Hellenized. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
And that's where we get the word, is that that font, but Rome had basically conquered the known world, and they Hellenized, and they made, people learn a certain type of Greek, and the whole world knew it, so there was this access that Jesus had to the whole world. He came at that time, when he died and rose again, they were able to write the gospel, and the whole world was able to hear it. And I feel like that's what social media is, if you look at it that way. But you have to be intentional with it, so some people get caught up and they start, they're thinking that they're doing something for God, and they're actually building the Tower of Babel,
Right.
and so, it's kind of funny too, because there is both those things. You just have to be so aware, man. You cannot be in this life just floating around. You have to have like intentionality with everything, every relationship, every outlet. You only have a certain amount of energy a day, so you have to like know what you're pouring into, and if it's taking from you or you're pouring your energy out, if it's taking your energy, that's what happens to a lot of people. It happens to me, on social media too, but I think it's a full-time gig, man. I mean, I got a social media person running my social media. I'm constantly thinking about, it's my biggest platform as far as how to get in contact with my fans,
right.
The fastest way.
But that's the business side of things too. And I don't have a problem. Like, when I remember years and years ago when my sister-in-law, Facebook had just come out, and she said, "Oh, you really need to get onto Facebook." And I said, "Why?" She says, "Well, you can connect with all these people and stuff." And so I ended up jumping onto Facebook, setting up a profile and stuff. But what I recognized in all of it was, this is advertising. Right? This is marketing.
Yeah.
And I don't spend tons of time on social media doing, like, on my personal profile. I might post once every 6 months if I'm lucky, because I really don't use it for that. But I feel sorry for the people that their life is on social media, where they have no relationships with people outside of this device or this screen, and I'm thinking they're missing out on so much, because there's people you can actually have coffee with face to face, and there's people you can hang out with and do stuff with, but you're on this,
It is. It's we're seeing the effects of it. We're seeing the effects of social media in our generation. I mean, look at the presidential, this last election in the United States. It was so, social media was so politically charged, it's just changing culture, everything. So I think it's more of a conversation of like, how do we, where do we go from here, and it's never going to go away. They're making a meta universe, bro. Like, they're making like a universe that you can, like, Ready Player One. Have you seen that movie?
Yeah.
Or it's like going to be like that. You can have an avatar and live in this world, and I think that is just the next phase of what, it sucks. I mean, it's scary, it's crazy growing up. I grew up, 80s, and I was born 87, and grew up in the 90s, and I can't even remember, what it was like. I remember when I didn't have a phone, but it's hard to remember, like, what did I do? I just lived life, and I saw my friends when I saw them, and, I was intentional and with the people. But now you see that people are more spread out. They're more content with not, I don't know. It just feels a little different, but
yeah. And I think the pandemic has nurtured that a little too, because they haven't been able to. I mean, that's been the excuse where you couldn't get out to see your friends, and all you had was social media. So, you've got the FaceTime, you've got the Zoom calls, you've got email if you still use that, and messaging and stuff like that. But I think part of it was they didn't have a choice. Yeah,
I think there's a lot of, I don't know, who knows, man. There's a whole agenda out there, There's I feel like we're seeing the world's condition right now. We're seeing the state of the world's condition, and I feel like, for me, I have to start creating narratives, and I have to press into what God is saying about it all, because I have kids, you know what I'm saying? And I'm like, and I want them to be able to have influence in the world, and I want them to be able to grow up in a world where they're looking at it not as like, damn, I'm inheriting this this trash can, but like for them to have the idea of like, okay, I'm going in, and they're on mission to love. But it's difficult, man. And I think for me, I've just having to find that balance, find that discipline, the discipline of, okay, I'm only going to be on social media for this many hours. I got to compartmentalize every aspect of my life. And that for me is just what's been getting me through, is just self-discipline.
Yeah, I think that's the key right there. And I've tried to do the same thing where I just don't have time to jump on there. It's just, I was mentioning this to someone the other day, like simple thing like a phone call. I try to make my phone calls in the car with my hands free, because I don't want to be stuck on the phone at home when I get home from work, when I could be spending time with my family or doing household chores that need to be done. I'm not going to, put that aside to be chatting about nothing on the phone with somebody. If I'm going to chat with anybody on the phone, I'll do it in my car. And once I get home, sorry, it's not that I'm not taking calls, but I've got other priorities now, right?
Yeah, that's a good one. I mean, I think everybody could, put that on, implement that in their life. The hardest part is to turn off work when you get home. You get home, and as any entrepreneur, you're just creating you're creating the future. It's an entrepreneurship and faith. It's those are two things that you work out with God, is how you trust God with your business, and how you trust him with your family. So it's like you have to have faith in all those things, being like, okay, if I put the phone down, or if I put work down, come home and I'm just focused here, then it's going to be okay come, tomorrow morning, but sometimes that anxiety and that, that poverty mindset too, man. For me growing up, I grew up poor. So I have, that's one of those things God's healing in me is, and that's why I say healing, because healing takes time, and there's some people who get it right away in one encounter. But you just, it takes time, to really get things deeply healed, and I didn't know that for a long time. And so trusting God in my career and trusting God with my family is still something that I dig into every single day. You know, it's like I'm like praying. I'm just like, God, and I go through the ups and downs, and that's why these songs sound the way they do. Savior, which is also on my EP. I need a savior. I need a miracle right now. I wrote it in my garage like 3 winters ago, just sitting in there, and I just didn't know what else to say, and I just sang that out, and he meets me in my confession, you know? So, but I feel like people make a lot of decisions out of poverty mindsets. A lot of people make decisions out of anxiety and fear. And you can get a lot of affirmation and you can escape a lot through social media right now. And so I'm trying to figure out different escapes. You know, reality is the new escape.
Yeah. Yeah, true. I was not well off growing up as well. We lived in subsidized housing for a portion of my life, and I didn't think anything, you know, I didn't feel I was poor. You know, we had food on the table and whatnot. We didn't go on lavish vacations or, you know, a lot of things that my friends did. But, you know, my parents were prioritizing on what was important, and I don't look down on them for anything they did and how they raised me or anything like that. But I will say, and this is something that you and I think, have in common, when you were in school, I guess you got involved in singing and performing arts. And I did the same thing. I remember in I guess it was grade 6, where my homeroom teacher was also the music teacher. And she recognized that I could sing, and she immediately, you know, conned me, if you want to call it that, to join the choir. I ended up joining the main choir. I ended up joining the boys' choir. I ended up being part of what they called the boys' triple trio, because there was 9 of us, and she couldn't, you know, split us any more to smaller groups. So she made a boys' triple trio, and I think I was singing alto at that time. And I don't know what I would have done if I wasn't involved in that part of my life. And the flip side to it was the church part of things, where I went to church if I didn't get involved in the church. So I ended up joining the band way back when, and then from the band I went into the sound ministry, ended up overseeing the sound ministry. And I was in my late teens when I was in charge of the sound department. I don't know what would have happened to me if I wasn't involved in doing stuff like that, whether it be in the church or music or whatever else. I don't know where my life would be if I hadn't done those things.
Yeah, those are good outlets for anybody. I think getting involved in anything that is bigger than yourself, you know, gives you like hope and purpose. You know, there's like, you know, direction. You get mentors and people who are really looking out for you, and I think all those things are good, and those help me too. You know, I've had so many different outlets, and you know, to go back to the whole, I hope I didn't come off as like I was knocking on poor people, or
no.
Like I said, I grew up poor.
Yeah.
And the poverty mindset, I just want to clarify, poverty mindset is is a mindset that you have when you feel like God won't provide, you know?
And you're stuck.
And you're stuck in this thing, these routines, because of the mindset of like, I need to get, because you came from a place to where you always needed to get, and you were always in desperation. But now in the kingdom of God, there's no striving. So you can feel those things, and you can find the root of things by understanding your testimony. So when I say poverty mindset, it means, you know, I struggle with poverty mindset still too, but I just wanted to clarify. But to go forward, what you were saying is, a lot of people, I think, do a lot better when you're involved in, you know, in group activities like that. You know, I think, you know, musically too, you know, there's so many people like sports, they like that thing. I did sports in high school, you know, and I did, you know, those types of, but then I eventually just did swimming and wrestling and choir when I was in high school.
Wow, quite a mix there.
Yeah, definitely interesting. But then I quit wrestling. I wrestled because I had a buddy who wrestled, and it was like, it just felt like, oh, okay, cool, I'm pretty strong, like, you know, and my coaches were like, dang, you know, and I could hustle and you know, I grew up without a father. Maybe that's why, because it felt so good to have testosterone flowing. You know, I was wrestling this dude and like pinning dudes down. And
you're the man. Yeah.
I'm yeah, let's go, Ellis. And I'm like, yeah, you know. But then I actually quit wrestling because I got the lead in the high school play. So
was it a musical? Was it a musical or
it was a musical too.
Okay,
It was the Scarlet Pimpernel of all. Like, in the Scarlet Pimpernel, he's acting kind of flamboyant to cover that he's the guy that's saving all these people from getting their heads chopped off. But I quit wrestling and my coach just stared at me and he was like, dude, get out of here. But it was it was fun. It was fun being a part of that. And, I think all these things led to, what eventually brought me to Jesus. I don't know where I would be if it wasn't for God, though. A lot of these things that happened in my life are only because of God. I think my whole life, if I look back, I'm like, God, you planned it all, and I've just been, what's funny though, is like back in the day, I didn't even plan on meeting God and I still met him. And I wasn't even thinking that hard back then. I was like, just, I wasn't thinking at all. And I encountered him. And then as soon as I encountered him and I'm like, Jesus, then I started overthinking. And so I'm like, man, maybe I'm just overthinking. I got to go back to that, whatever that mindset was back in the day.
Right. So let's take a side thing here. Let's talk about your writing. Obviously, you've written a lot on your own, and you've got your own songs that are out there. But what blows me away, and it shouldn't, and I'm sure a lot of our listeners would agree to the fact that a lot of times when you hear of a new artist, they're not really a new artist. So everybody is now hearing about Ryan Ellis. But you're not new. I mean, you're just new to us. You've been around for a while, and I mean, you've co-written and written songs with or for Chris Tomlin, Natalie Grant, Matt Redman, Meredith Andrews, Stephen Malcolm. You wrote, correct me if I'm wrong, you wrote Tomlin's Resurrection Power song?
Yes, sir.
I mean, that's a huge song, and people would, equate that song to Chris Tomlin, but you wrote it.
Yeah, it was, that's, it's actually cool to hear all that. I'm glad that that's the resume. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, it's just all these years, I'm proud of those names that you called off. Those were all really cool God moments, and I have been doing this for a minute, and sometimes it feels like that, and starting all over, starting back at square one, but it doesn't, sometimes it feels like, man, God, we've been doing this a long time, and then sometimes I'm like, man, we've never been here before though. And I get like this juice of like, okay, let's keep going, and, my journey has been a journey of just faith. I've always pretended like I thought I was calculated, but at the end, God has always been surprising me, and all those things, even the Chris Tomlin cut, it wasn't ever like, I'm going to like go into Christian music and I'm going to try to write this song. Or even Chris Tomlin, like I wrote that song, Resurrection Power, when I was in Santa Barbara. I was fresh out the Navy. After I got out of high school, I joined the Navy and I was in for 5 years. And then I got saved while I was in. My mother and I reconnected. She was the one who started giving me Bible verses and going after me. And I eventually got saved. That's
what moms do, right?
That's what moms do, man. And I just had this real encounter, where I was just like, something needs to change in my life. There's got to be more to this, and my mom was text messaged me these Bible verses and I was like, I'm not having it. And then it just started softening my heart. I started looking into it and then I started questioning, there's like these steps that, people just have to be okay with, like there's one step. The first step is denial, and the second step is questions. And then the third step is like listening, and I went through all those steps and then I got saved I started implementing it into my life, and then I got back in California, started hanging out with my family more. And then I started playing worship. My mom and I are very musical, my brother as well. We all, grew up singing and playing music by ear. And I couldn't write a song to save my life. It wasn't until I got saved. It wasn't until I started following Jesus and I just had something to really sing about. And then all these other moments, it was kind of, I had this encounter where I got out of the Navy in 2011. I had no idea what I was going to do afterwards because they were kicking people out of the Navy. It was called perform to serve, and you had to have X, Y, and Z on paper. Obama had basically cut the military in half, so they were kicking out sailors left and right. You couldn't re-enlist unless you wanted to change jobs.
Right.
So I got out. And I just was like, all right, God, I'm trusting you. I couldn't even get a job as a waiter. I was in Afghanistan leading a team of 30, through the desert. You telling me I can't take orders? I don't have experience? I just was looking for suicide bombers on my base. What are you talking about? And, and that was a huge thing too. I was I was out of the Navy and I had so much identity in it that I was like, what am I going to do now? Who am I? And then God kind of came through and just showed me that I was in his army now, I was in his military but that we did things differently, it was all out of love. And so I started doing these worship nights, and then I moved up to Santa Barbara because there was this ministry up there called Jesus Burgers where they handed out hamburgers to the college kids partying at night. And I went up there and, man, I'm serious. I saw miracles. I saw people get healed. I saw people get encounters with God. These kids that are drunk, high and drunk, walking on the streets, thousands of kids walking up and down these streets. Just look up Isla Vista party scene and you can see it's the college party town, but there's nothing like it. It's right next to the beach. We have the house, the G's Burgers house is right in the middle of the party street.
Oh, who wouldn't want a free burger?
Oh, that's it. That's what I'm saying, man. And that's
awesome.
That's the same as the gospel. Who wouldn't want the gospel? It's
right.
free,
Yeah.
So people come up, they get the hamburger, and I just go up to put my hand on their shoulder, like, brother, you're amazing, man. God loves you. And then then I would let him walk off because I know he's going to be coming back an hour later to get another hamburger, or I'd see them where they live in the neighborhood, and it really taught me how to just love people and not have an agenda, not have an agenda to they need to know the gospel. It's dude, you got to learn how to talk to people. You got to learn how to get on people's level and make them feel loved. And you can't love people if you have an agenda. So It's I'm still trying to learn that to this day, how to see people exactly where they're at and not be I have something that you need. You need the gospel.
That is the without the agenda part is so hard for people.
It's hard because they've never learned how to love. They've only known love through Jesus, and then their ways of love is very selfish. My way of love is very selfish, So it's to look at somebody and just be yo, how do I get on this person's level? How do I just love them for the character that they are? The homie that, there's these rehab people, that we come and I see them, pretty consistently. The dude missing the tubes with the crazy hair. And I love him. I'm like, dude, you're you, bro. I'm when I see him, and he, I try to get into that mode where he feels seen and he doesn't feel judged, and that's where you'll get the best out of people. But when it comes to writing songs and Tom and all these people, that's the beauty of God in the sense of I was just doing that. My mission was people, it was loving people, and a song was birthed out of it called Resurrection Power. And then Ed Cash, who is he's on We the Kingdom now.
Yeah.
But he heard that song out in Kona because another worship leader heard me sing it. And Ed Cash, calls me up, we're FaceTiming now, and then he's helping me dial it in, and he's like, dude, I think Chris would want to sing this song, man. And I'm thinking, hey, well, I sing too, bro. I was thinking for the second, I was like, hey, it'd be cool, but that's what makes Ed such, that makes Ed Cash a legend, is he's done things like this before where what is God doing, and who is God use, and who has the biggest microphone for the church? Because the revelation is bigger to me than the fame.
Yeah.
And that's why I've been writing for these, all these songs got cut, I could have cut them all myself, but they wouldn't have had the impact, that
Right.
they've had, because the people that God has placed in these positions, like Tomlin, Redmond, Natalie, Meredith, all these people, they've sown in faith in their lives, and God has put them in a place where people trust, who they are and what they say. And if these guys believe in the revelation, then hey, go for it, and preach it to the church, because the church needs to hear it. So Resurrection Power was like, a song about the Holy Spirit living on the inside, and now we have so many songs about that. But back then it was such a fresh revelation for me, because I was just fresh walking out in this. I got out of the military. I was super legalistic before. I was very legalistic. And then I had a crazy encounter with God's freedom and joy, and like freedom from condemnation, freedom from judgment of myself, of other people. And I started walking out in faith that God was just going to lead. And then that brought me all the way here. So,
For looking at it from a purely secular, can I use that word? From a purely secular standpoint, I think career-wise, co-writing or writing songs for these other more prominent artists, perhaps just a stepping stone for your career, but also proving yourself in the industry and ultimately getting the respect, so that when you venture out on your own, you've already done all the background work. Like, people know who you are, and if they don't, they very quickly understand, what you've done to get where you are. And I guess that was my point in the beginning, where, we may not have heard of you, but you've got the experience already under your belt that just kind of pushes you to that next level, whether you knew it was going to happen or not, right?
Yeah, I mean, I've been doing this. I've been writing. I've been in a secret place. I think of like when David was in the cave. What did that homie do when he was in the cave? And that's kind of been my season, is being in the cave, being in the secret place, being in the hiding place. But when it's time to show up, trusting God that He's going to provide. And being ready in and out of season. All those seasons with the songs with Meredith, the songs with Redmond, and all these other things that happened. For instance, I got called up one night, and I'm not, trying to toot my own horn. It's just, this is a crazy, I'm not doing anything, I've just been writing, and if anybody knows, most Christian music comes out of Nashville. It's like,
yeah. So that makes it more difficult for you because you're in California.
I'm in California, and I've been staying here because I feel like God has called me here. I feel like God has called me to this state, and I feel like I'm going to see a revival here. I feel like I'm going to see this thing. From the moment that I got out of the military, the word that God gave me was, you're going to see revival in California. And everything that I've done has been interweaved with that, from the house churches to the partnerships, to the different things, to having the connections out to Nashville, but still living here by God's provision, and so there's not, I'm not writing all the time, I'm not writing as much as these other Nashville writers are, which I admire and I envy sometimes, because I'm a grinder. I'm a musician. I'm a musical person. I stay up late up at night and I'm just working on music. It's my passion. I'm passionate about music. And
but then it's not work at that point anyways.
Exactly. So now I'm looking at some of my peers and I'm seeing their exhaustion, and I'm seeing that they're on a grind, and I'm actually thankful that I be in California and not doing that. But at the same time, I'm just sitting in the hiding place, twirling my thumbs, just like, God, what are we doing next? And,
right.
And so there's periods of time where I'm just in dad life, in the heart of the Father, the song Heart of the Father, I sing it to myself too, so that I can just remember, how to raise these kids right and be a good, loving husband and father. But, a funny story is, for months I'm kind of low key, just chilling, not doing anything, praying, God, what am I doing? I get these crazy huge opportunities like Tomlin cutting Resurrection Power, all of a sudden writing with Redman, and then Meredith's cutting a song. And I'm like, and these are all like months and months and months and months in between. And then all of a sudden I get a phone call and it's like, hey bro, you led at our church. This is a guy named Jared Gibbo from Transparent Productions. He put on all the tours for all the Christian artists on the West Coast. And he goes, hey, I saw you lead worship at our church last Sunday. Zach Williams has laryngitis or something like that. And he cannot, he's not coming out. Can you fill his spot? So now out of nowhere, I'm filling in for Zach Williams. Everybody who's come for Zach Williams is like, where the heck is Zach Williams? But then they, find out that his voice is gone. And I have my little band, that I've been practicing with, and I'm like, hey, they called us up, and we get in. It's a stadium. It's 10,000 people.
Oh, wow.
In this stadium. And God's grace just fell. And dude, I think it went amazing. It was like that moment, as a musician or worship leaders, you can feel when the room is united, and we got there and I was just like, oh my gosh. And then boom, nothing else after that. It was like this amazing moment, Transparent Productions. Everybody was, oh my gosh, like that was crazy. Like everyone was crying. We had this amazing God moment. And then I didn't do anything after that for the next year. Oh. And then, and then it's like record deals, record label, coming. I'm like, oh, and my son's passing away and all this. And so all these things, I've just been in this secret place. And still, and it's just been, I think, my heart, God's been getting my heart ready. And so I have been doing this for a minute, but I'm still a beginner. That's how I like to look at it all every single day. It's like, I'm beginning again.
Well, that's a good way to look at it too, because who knows where you'll be in a year from now or 5 years from now. Right. And if you did know, your mind would probably be blown anyways. Right. So,
I mean, when I went up to Jesus Burgers, my pastor up there, he was my mentor, and he's still my mentor. His name's Jason Lomolino. He said this to me, and I just remember it. He goes, if God were to give you everything that you are called to right now, it would crush you. It would kill you. Yeah. And I believe that. I believe it now because of where I'm standing. And back then, I don't think I would be able to hold all this, but time, and years, and just, it's like anything, working out a muscle over and over and over again to where you got to lift that heavy one, when you got to do superset days, you're ready for that. Your muscles are ready. So I've just been warming my muscles up, getting ready. So with that to say, then we haven't seen anything yet, right?
Exactly. Well, listen, Ryan, what an amazing opportunity to chat with you. I'm just so looking forward to see what God does in your life. It's exciting. I'm just loving Heart of the Father right now. Like, that is my song. And I don't get into songs, like, I'm the music director at the radio station. I'm also the morning show host. But when that song is scheduled and it gets played during my show, I mean, it's cranked in the studio because I love it. It's just an amazing song. And it's that bridge that does it for me. So just keep writing stuff like that. Keep it simple and just these amazing, powerful, simple but powerful lyrics and powerful songs and arrangements and whatnot. It's amazing. I love it.
Amen. Thank you so much for having me on. It's been a blessing.
So nice to chat with Ryan Ellis. Make sure you check out his website, ryanellismusic.com, to find the links to his music, chord charts, events, social media, and so much more. It's time for some artist advice. Here's Josh Wilson.
I remember one time I was at a meeting for Christian artists, and Bob Goff was speaking, and he said, aim for your target. So whatever it is you do, that's your target, right? So the kind of art or songs or writing, whatever God has put in your heart, that's what you're supposed to do. So if you start aiming for someone else's target, let's say I want to write songs like Matthew West, and I start shooting for his target, well, I'm going to miss every time because I need to be going for my target. So we already have a Matthew West. This world needs, as far as what I can offer, it needs what I can bring. I don't need to try to be somebody else. So yeah, shoot for your target.
Great words of wisdom from Josh Wilson. Aim for your target. Focus on you, not everyone else. Well, that wraps up this week's episode of Between the Grooves. Don't forget to catch our annual Christmas show next week. If you subscribe to the podcast, we'll let you know as soon as it drops. In the meantime, always enjoy hearing and seeing your feedback. You can comment on Apple Podcasts or on Twitter and Facebook at Between Grooves. Look forward to celebrating Christmas with you next week.